7 Hz Dioko, a Crinacle collaboration PLANAR IEM coming in at only $99, making this the cheapest IEM, or cheapest PLANAR IEM I should say, on the market right now. But how good is it really? Let's find out. Hey friends, Timmy here, welcome back to another video on Giz Audio, and please excuse my voice, I'm still sick. It's been like a week and yeah, it's not going away. But yes, back to the Dioko. Today, of course, we are reviewing it and also comparing it to the Shure's S12, the Timeless, the Aria, the Titan S, and maybe even the Hook X, why not? Let's first start off with the sound signature. Now, this is a very safe tuning, even for Crinacle standards. If you guys do not know, Crinacle tunes his IEMs to his Crinacle neutral target with a bit of a bass boost. Now, the amount of bass really varies between each collab projects. This one is on the more, I would say, modest for Crinacle standard. It has bass power, yes, but it's not the most powerful or the most forward bass out there. When you listen to a Dioko, the first thing you're gonna notice is not the bass. It's not the highlight, it's there. What you notice more of is simply how balanced and how clean it sounds. The bass here has a sub-bass focus leading into the lower mid-range. The lower mid-range and bass separation is done extremely well, just like any other Crinacle collab IEMs, and I think that's something we can come to expect from the Crinacle name, is that you're not gonna get any bass bleed, mud, or bloat in any way at all. You're gonna get mainly a clean, slightly a bit powerful bass, or powerful if we're talking about the FHE. But yes, the Dioko has a signature sub-bass focus, clean lower mids and bass separation, just good bass quality there in general. In terms of the hits and slam, the mid-bass fun, the thumps, whatever you want to call it, this has that, but to a lesser degree. It's not the most forward like a Moondrop Aria. So when you listen to genres like EDMs, rap, hip-hop, you're not really gonna get that thumping bass that some people really like. Again, it's more sub-bass focused, so you're gonna get a lot more of that rumbly feeling, but the hits and slam, it's not coming across as dynamic as I think some people would like. If you're used to something like the Moondrop Aria, this is cut back in that department. Now, that's not a bad thing at all, that's just preference. Now, on to the mid-range, starting with the lower mids. Again, very clean, well separated, flat, correct sounding lower mids. You're not gonna get any sort of warmth in any way. Vocals and instrumentals comes across as natural as they can in this lower department. When it comes to the upper mids, it has a relatively tamer upper mids, not shouty in any way at all, not really as forward as well. If you take a Moondrop Aria or a Duino Titan S, or even the S12 or the Timeless, all those 4 IEMs are gonna have more of a forward upper mids or more of a forward vocal presentation than on the Dioko. This one is slightly bit more tame, and that for me just sounds very safe. This is not an IEM that's gonna really offend anyone in any way at all. If you find the Aria to be shouty, you're not gonna find the Dioko to be shouty. If you like a more relaxing presentation, the Dioko has that. If you want a more engaging presentation, then the Dioko potentially fits that bill for you as well. But for me, for my personal taste, I feel it's a little bit too laid back, a little bit too safe. Again, that's just my personal preference. I want vocals and the upper mids, the instruments in general, to come across a bit more forward for me. This feels a little bit too safe. It feels, I guess, a little bit too balanced, if that's even a term, but I do want a little bit more liveliness out of the upper mid-range than the Dioko can deliver. But again, that's just preference. It's on the tamer side. That being said though, the Dioko still has a really nice sounding mids in general. Correct sounding mid-range nonetheless. On to the treble area. Now, the treble area is where a lot of the cheaper IEMs, I would say under $200, tend to struggle with the most. And let's be honest, even the higher end IEMs struggle in the treble area, because that's just not something IEMs tend to do well in general, and it's especially worse in IEMs that are below $200, the cheaper ones. How then does the Dioko fare against that overall statement? For me, the Dioko is just alright as well. Yes, a lot similar to a lot of other IEMs out there in the treble area. It's not my favorite part of the Dioko for sure. It's not tamed like on the Starfield or potentially the Aria. It has treble, but it's just not the most even feeling treble out there. The good part about it is that there's no fatiguingness, there's no sibilances. That's always a great quality, but it's just a little bit uneven. So female vocals and some instruments that lives in the treble area doesn't quite sound as natural near their top of the range. It has a little bit of this, I would say, not peakiness, but just unevenness overall. Again, back to my previous statement, this is not a unique thing to the Dioko. A lot of the IEMs in this range just don't do treble that well. The Aria, the Titan S included. So Dioko just kind of joins the party. While it's not my favorite part of the Dioko, I wouldn't say it's a poorly done treble. It's one of the better done treble out there in the $100 realm, but it's still not the best part of the IEM nonetheless. Now, for the moment everyone's been waiting for, the technical performance. How are the details, the soundstage and imaging on the Dioko? Being that it's only $99, does it compete at all with the other PLANARs that are more expensive? And the answer to that is, let's bring up my scale. It almost does. Yeah, it almost does. I would say it sits a little bit above the Starfield, just right around that area. It's not quite an S12, it's not quite a Timeless, at least to my ears, but it's up there, you know. $99 to get details like this is really good. Now, soundstage wise, this thing has, I would say, more width than it has height. It feels wider than taller. It doesn't have this kind of grandeur feeling that I would say an S12 have. This thing just on the wide side, not really wide though. I would still say that it's just average wide at best. So nothing too impressive here, but it's not bad either. So yeah, average soundstage, let's just say that. Imaging wise, I would say this is on the average side as well. You get really good instrumental placement, not pinpoint. There's still a little bit of edge overlaps here and there. It's not a tall soundstage as well, so you won't get that kind of like 3D holographic feeling stage or imaging. But for $99, you're not gonna expect that. And for $99, you're not gonna get that with any other IEM. At least not in 2022. In the future, maybe. But yes, the Dioko has decent imaging, and that's good enough for me. All right, now on to the comparison segment, the most exciting segment of the video. First comparison is gonna be between the Dioko and the S12 and Timeless. Now the S12 and Timeless are more V-shaped in signature. The Dioko really stands out because the tuning is just different. The Dioko is more of a neutral, balanced signature, while the S12 and the Timeless again are V-shaped. They're more fun. They have more bass presence both in the sub bass and the mid bass, and the energy they give in the upper mids and treble area is just a lot more than what the Dioko can deliver. What the Dioko does better is how clean it is in the mid-range. Again, there's no bass bleed or bass bloat in any way. Not to say that the S12 and the Timeless has that, but they both have a slightly bit of warmth leading in. Not a bad thing, just a little bit of warmth, while the Dioko is just clean across the board when it comes to the lower area. It's just a more neutrally done IEM, more high fidelity or hi-fi, if you will, tuning wise, while the S12 and Timeless are more fun and more lively. So yes, the tuning is different. The details is also different. The S12 and Timeless has better details overall, also better staging and imaging overall as well. They are more expensive, so that's to be expected. The Dioko is still good though, like I said. $99, still great. Now, the Dioko versus the Hook X. Again, here the tuning is very different. The Dioko, again, is more neutral with a sub-bass focus. The Hook X, on the other hand, has a lot more mid-bass, has a bit of warmth as well in the lower mid-range, so male vocals and instrumentals that live in that range comes across heavier than on the Dioko. What's similar about the two would be the upper mid-range, both having a tamer upper mids, and the treble area being slightly a bit uneven, similar to each other as well. In terms of details, I would say the Hook X and the Dioko are fairly close, with the Hook X coming ahead just a little bit. Next one is the Aria. Similar story bass-wise to the Hook X. The Aria has more mid-bass and slightly bit more warmth than on the Dioko. So it's gonna come across more thumpy, more slammy, more fun than the Dioko in the low end overall. In terms of the upper mid-range, like I mentioned before, the Aria has a lot more energy here. The vocals are livelier and more forward. Now, what the Dioko does better than the Aria is in, again, the more flat mid-range, the more neutral mid-range in general. It just comes across cleaner than on the Aria, and that's something that I prefer. And also, the detail retrieval is also better than the Aria, and more importantly, the treble is better than the Aria. It's a little bit more even, still not a grade or two above the Aria in any way, but still better nonetheless. And lastly, the Dunu Titan S. Now these two are similar in some ways, especially in the philosophy of the tuning. The Dunu Titan S tries to go for a more neutral signature. I would say the Dioko achieves that better than the Titan S. So if you want a more neutral IEM from the two, the Dioko is more neutral. Now the Titan S has a little bit more mid-bass than on the Dioko. It doesn't have the warmth of the Aria, but it does have more of that mid-bass presence overall. When it comes to the upper mids, this is where they become the most different. The Titan S has a lot more upper mids energy. Vocals just comes across lively and nice on the Titan S, while on the Dioko, they're more relaxed and tamed. In terms of the detail retrieval, I would say the Dioko is better than the Titan S. Well, the Titan S and the Aria are the same. So yes, it's better than the Aria, which means it's also better than a Titan S in this regard. Alright, that concludes this review and comparison. So my final thoughts on the Dioko is that it is simply one of the better IEMs you can grab under $100. Now, in that range, you have the Aria, you have the Titan S, you have now the Dioko, you have the D10T4 to choose from. I would say out of all these, the Dioko stands out the most in just how well it's tuned. It's neutral done right. It's neutral with bass boost done really correctly, and for $99 you're simply not gonna get tuning of that caliber. This type of tuning you expect in $200, $300 plus IEM. The number two good thing about the Dioko is that it is easily one of the most resolving IEMs under $100. With that all said, I would say the Dioko is an easy recommendation for $99. It may not be my personal favorite tuning. Again, it's a little bit too tame for me, doesn't really fit my personal library or taste really well, but nonetheless, it is a great IEM that's, again, super safe for anyone to grab. No one's gonna hate this. You're gonna find a lot of things to like about this IEM, and if you haven't listened to a super clean lower mids before, you owe it to yourself to give this one a try.